stream is live.
Good afternoon.
The event has been started on Discord, meaning users have been notified. And I will ping everyone.
Oop, Campfire.
What's this event about? This user asks. Read the event description. That's why it's an event.
I'll get my copy pasta.
We'll give people time to roll in here, as usual. Stealth, you can mute the room. We're looking for more engagement, not less. So I would prefer to ping everyone.
Yep.
The last shotgun in Twitch chat. Good day, developers. I'm trying to engage as much as I can, he says. All right.
Engaging before the stream starts, that's a plus. Or did it start? Oh, I had to refresh it.
This guy. What do you mean it has not been... I said you can mute the room anyway. For the people who are watching this after the fact, someone said don't ping everyone. I said you can mute the room. He responds not before it's created. I said, well, it's been here for 8 months. Like, you can't post in the room when we're not doing a chat, but the room is still visible for you to mute. He asks, so... It's like, well, so you could have muted it before. Alright, silence the whole server. You do you, dude, but... I mean, I would expect that you would be in this server for a reason. Meanwhile, Hector is trying to figure out which dev he can take on in a fist fight. I'll give it a few more minutes. See if anyone else shows up. And in the meantime, let me actually open up the submission box. What sort of
Yes,
activity do we have? Not too many questions today.
still, still none from the ping so far, which I imagine people are going to ask in chat rather than what the heck.
Benny asks, "Is Benny for dev confirmed?" Question mark. No. Steve asks, "Yo, will there ever be a way to make shops or whatever? It would be cool to have your own company. Try out Ursa Polaris."
We get that one a lot.
Ursa Polaris is a plugin. You build your own station, which you stock with your own outfitters, which pull from locations across the galaxy. I believe you also are able to stock up all human ships there as well.
If I remember correctly, I believe you asked us this question last time, Steve. And our answer is essentially kind of it'd be more of like a plug-in thing.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking to get paid for setting something up, I know a guy up in high space. He's preoccupied at the moment, but
Okay, my bad then. Someone did.
the last shotgun says on Twitch, "I know that Discord chat is going to be sensory overload of pain and weirdness, hence why I'm here."
But who is phone?
Phone who? All right, I think we've given people enough time to show up. How's everyone doing? It's been a month since
Hello.
or a little over a month since we've last released, and the next release is underway. It's shaping up to be rather sizable, if I do say so myself. There's a lot of long-standing pain points that I would like to at least start making moves on. One of which being fighter gameplay, which we discussed last time, I believe. The last time or the time before. I know some of these recent ones we were discussing some balance changes. And some of those changes that we discussed, I do actually want to start getting some changes into the game for. That way we can actually test them out, see if they're working or not. Fighters revealed, asks Hector. We can call it that, the Fighters revealed update. Every update from now on out is going to have a title to it, like Minecraft does. It's all going to be like something revealed.
Part one.
Yeah.
True.
Fighters revealed part 1.
Part one of to be decided.
Yeah, but in any case, if you don't know, since I'm on the topic, if you don't know what we discussed last time in terms of buffing fighters, we kind of went over how when fighters are engaged in combat, for the duration of combat that they're alive, they can actually be very useful because fighters are at least intended to be deployed in large numbers. For their size, like if you look at how much they cost and for their size, they actually put out a lot of DPS.
Yep.
If you wanted to buy one heavy warship or a bunch of fighters, the fighters are going to win if it's the same value for both. We do recognize, though, that fighter gameplay is hampered by the fact that you need to prepare and buy new fighters if you lose them, whereas the heavy warship is a lot harder to lose. And typically, if you're losing a heavy warship, you're probably going to be like, you know what, I'm just going to save scum. But with the fighters, like if you lose 1 or 2 fighters, it's probably not worth save scumming. So you actually lose value by using fighters over time, even if it does gain you something of an advantage in the immediate with combat. There's been talk about making it so that, for example, like buffing them in ways where maybe they have more health, or maybe they somehow dodge attacks so that they don't get damaged by them and therefore last longer. We kind of outlined, though, how we don't want to buff fighters in a way that will make them last longer in combat. Epsilon says wrong for reasons unknown.
Ziproot did just post, if you guys didn't see it, a PR link to our most recent method of buffing fighters.
Yes. This
If
is
you want
what
to check that out.
this is what we're actually looking at, making it so that once your fighters are disabled, or actually once any fighters are disabled, they will no longer take damage unless they are being directly targeted by whatever is firing at them, or an explosion goes off near them and damages them. This means that stray projectiles will no longer damage them, and this actually includes any projectiles that were fired at the ship before it became disabled. So what will happen is, let's say you're using a blaster turret and you're firing at a fighter. By the time that blaster turret is disabled, or that rather the fighter is disabled, you still have a lot of blaster bolts in the air. And typically that would mean that those are all going to hit the ship after it's been disabled and outright kill it. Now, once that ship is disabled, it's going to go through all the projectiles and be like, all right, well, this projectile was targeting this ship and it just got disabled. Let me untarget that ship. Therefore, the projectile will just phase right through the ship as if it wasn't even an enemy. That way, your fighters still last as long in combat as they already do now, but once they become disabled, it is far, far more likely that once the battle is over, you'll be able to repair them, dock them, and leave without having lost them. So this attacks the main pain point of fighters being their resupply costs.
Yep. Oh, Last Shotgun on Twitch says that is actually a very elegant solution.
Yeah, I know there's been it's a solution that's been floated a few times over the years. I feel like last time I mentioned it, there wasn't as much enthusiasm in the idea. But that was also with a smaller group of people. So I don't know if it was just the particular people who were there at the time. I know that one of the concerns with the idea was something to the effect of, well, why would this only happen to fighters? Why would this not happen to all ships? And my answer is gameplay. Like, it doesn't, you're not like losing heavy warships en masse because they keep getting damaged after they've been disabled. Like, that's not a buff that heavy warships need. It's a buff that fighters need. And when I say fighters, I mean fighters and drones. I mean any ship that can be carried. I just typically say fighters because it's quicker and easier.
With all the discussion that has been going back and forth, we kind of came to terms that we do want to kind of view fighters as maybe not necessarily an equal ship, except it's like a small ship compared to others, but more of like a different aspect of gameplay. It's like you're obviously not going to be flying around in a fighter.
I mean, you could.
You could.
We
it's
let
been
you,
done before.
But we don't expect you.
I believe back in the day, didn't Brick beat the campaign in a box wing?
Allegedly.
Yeah. But anyway, but yeah. So like the notion of they shouldn't get special treatment is a little bit more loose now. But like we're not going to give fighters like a bonus health bar or something along those lines, or only them get dodge chance. Something like that.
Benny says that's a rumor. He said he never did it later. Okay.
Oh.
Azura asks, by the way, are there plans to eventually merge fighters and drones and their bay types and just set a mass-based bay limit? No. At least for myself, I think the issue with mass-based bay limits is, let's say we have a heavier fighter. Right now, you could take that heavier fighter and put it into your older carriers that you already had, but because it's only based on category. But if we make it so it's a mass limit, let's say we have some faction with a new fighter that's a little bit heavier than everything else that goes just beyond that limit. Well, now there's probably only one ship in the game, or maybe two ships in the game from that faction that you can actually use that fighter with.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the fighter is easy to get your hands on because fighters typically have one or two crew. Or if it's a drone, they have no crew and they're easy to get if they're disabled, assuming they're capturable. But the carriers are going to be a lot less capturable. So it'll actually be a bit more of a pain to have those fighters or drones with the mass limits. The main thing I'm thinking is you could not recognize, like, there's no way for you to scan a ship and say, okay, this ship weighs this much. This ship has this mass. Let's say your mass limit on your bay is 150, and you have an alien fighter that weighs 151 or more. You don't know this. You capture the ship, and then you're like, okay, why is it not docking? Like, why can't I keep this ship? Why is it just stuck in this system? Well, it turns out that it's beyond the mass limit of your fighters, therefore, or your bays, therefore it can't dock. But there's nothing that tells the player that. Now, sure, maybe we could add a method of telling the player that, but to add some way of telling what the mass of the ship is just for the sake of making it so that we can have mass limits on bays, I don't know about that. Azure says, isn't that basically the same situation of fighters versus drones? In a sense, yes. So maybe the question is, do we just merge fighter and drone bays? We just have a bay and say these ships can be carried in bays. That I think is more likely. Mass
Hmm.
limits, no. Merging drone and fighter bays, maybe, maybe.
Hmm. An outfit limit. Well, sorry, I know you're saying. I know you're talking on Twitch. Jujuto, is that how you say that?
Just say Juju.
But, um, you were saying on Twitch, you were talking about having. This is kind of going backtracking a little bit. Having missiles have a percent chance to hit asteroids. That kind of falls in line though with like the whole like random chance bit. Asteroids are kind of meant to be that I don't know, this is kind of a little bit of a debate as well. It's just like that pure block for like longer distance fights and heavier asteroid fields. But so coming back to around what you said with the outfit limit, where fighters and drones limit how many you can fit in outfit space. So are you suggesting fighters take up outfit space then, or kinda? So I will put it this
Huh.
way: if you look back a bit at the Escape Velocity series, which this game is inspired on, inspired by, they did have actual outfits for bays, and there's kind of a reason I think why MZ chose not to make bays outfits and actually be part of the ships themselves, and that kind of goes in line with the fighters themselves. In both games, though, fighters have mass and like the weight of the ship down, yes, but whether or not that should be part of the ship's actual outfit load is a bit um, unsure.
I think the problem with making it so that fighters take up outfit space is we have certain ships in the game that are carriers.
You mean not
Juju
carrier
says no,
slot
not like that.
outfit?
I mean, not
What do you mean?
carriers, slot outfits. Oh, like outfits that add bays. That's kind of what Vic Yush asked. Asking actually, since you bring up fighters, have you guys thought about adding fighter bay modules as an installable outfit, like how you can install bunks or convert cargo space to outfit space? That's been brought up a few times. The main issue is
Is
um,
a mm,
a an engine or what's it? Engines, gun hardpoints, turret hardpoints, bays. These are all coordinates on the ship that say, okay, at this location, create an engine sprite when the ship is moving, or at this location, allow a gun to be installed, or at this location, spawn fighters when they're deployed. If we add an installable bay, then even if we could say, okay, this ship now has a new bay, where do we put it? The outfit can't say, okay, put it at this location on the ship, because maybe that location on the ship isn't actually on the ship. If you have bigger or smaller ships, it might be outside of the bounds of the ship. One of the big examples is the Model 512, which is just a massive donut. There's nothing in the middle of it, so we can't just choose 00 as the location on the ship where we spawn a fighter if it has this outfit installed. Then the question is, well, what if we had like predefined points on every single ship where you said, okay, if you had an outfit that added a carrier or added a bay, then you could do this and it would spawn here. At that point, though, it's getting very messy, I feel. And as Hector points out as well, if we make it so that any ship can become a carrier, effectively speaking, then the existing carrier ships aren't really as unique. Juju says, I
mhm.
don't mean add slots. Let me roll this up. If you want 12 fighters using 30 outfit space each, they'd have a total of 360 outfit space and require the carrier to have 180 outfit space.
Oh, you got a spam bot.
Spambot on Twitch? Cool.
Yep.
I want to offer promotion of your channel. Viewers, followers, views, and chatbots. Dude said I want to add more bots to your channel.
Yeah, you guys are all bots. Drones. We're talking about drones.
Anyway,
Um,
so if we say though, this is actually the other idea that's been brought up of require the carrier to have 180 outfit space. I'm not exactly sure how that would work out. Because what if, imagine you have a carrier that you're saying it requires that much outfit space to have its fighters. What if you just don't want to have fighters? Well, now this carrier has 180 extra outfit space that it can use for anything. You could just like tack on more power generation and shield generators to tank more damage. That then basically just turns carriers into the best warships in the game if they're not carrying fighters. Benny said, Juju never said to add more outfit space. Then do they have less outfit space as a result? Maybe I'm just not understanding this well, but it seems like either you're nerfing carriers so that they have to spend outfit space on their fighters, or you're buffing carriers so they can do what they already do while also still carrying fighters. But then that just makes it so they don't need to carry fighters; they can just do anything with that outfit space.
who said? Someone said something about the carrier being nerfed. Where did I see that? I have no idea what the other devs think, but I'm still of mind to nerf the carrier in other places. We have mentioned before, I still don't know if you're on this, Derpy, about kind of upping the amount of fighters on ships a little bit, mostly in human space. And if we were to do that, I'd be interested in kind of knocking down the carrier's hardpoint count. But
All right, Juju. I don't know if this is an exact comparison here, but there was a period of time where we made it so that if a fighter was docked on a carrier, that fighter could cool the carrier. Or no, what was it? No, it
oh
would give
yeah,
energy to the carrier. That's what it
yeah,
was.
yeah, yeah.
So if the carrier's batteries were low, the fighters would be like, "Oh, take my energy." Sounds fun. It was broken. It was extremely broken because
Extra
then you would just
generator.
keep the fighters docked forever, and your carrier wouldn't need power generation because the fighters are doing all of it. Which basically meant that your carrier had extra outfit space for every fighter that it had docked. Which is that not effectively what you're describing? Even if you're only using, even if you can only use specific outfits on the fighters or a certain amount of outfit space per fighter, it's still a buff to the carrier. Fighters take up outfit space equal to half the outfit space the fighters are using. But then that goes back to what I was saying earlier, and then you're either nerfing carriers or buffing carriers. Because either you're nerfing them because they have less outfit space for everything else, or we give them all an outfit space buff so that they can have those fighters. In which case, they don't need to use the fighters. They can just use that outfit space for anything else, which is basically the same thing as saying your fighters give outfit space to the carrier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, half is still a lot.
Especially when we're talking carrier size.
Yeah. 180 extra outfit space is still a lot.
For comparison, some of the largest weapon spaces on ships is 500, and that's pushing it quite a bit. So if we're talking almost a half of that or a third of that, that's still quite a big portion of the space of a ship dedicated for combat. For their own stuff. So are you saying they would lose weapons and engine size, or
I mean, we can already design carriers that have less weapon space or less hard points or what have you
yeah?
in exchange for having bays. I don't really see why we would need to introduce a mechanic like this to create such fighter or create such carriers. Half can be changed to 1/3. I think it still has the same issue.
Lost Cause, can you expand on that while we're talking about this? Well,
To read that out, he says, "Can this be addressed? Fighters
oh,
or
sorry.
fleets aren't fun to manage, and solo ship flying is not possible to complete the campaign."
I will start off by saying it is entirely possible to complete the campaign in solo ship.
He basically just said get good.
We've done a lot of tests with it, especially Warp, who's another dev. He's done numerous play streams through the campaign using different ships and builds, and it is difficult, and you kind of have to use tactics to get around certain fights, but it is entirely doable. Now, some of the missions are in need of balancing. I will say that. I've also done a playthrough of Free Roads somewhat recently, and I feel like some of the fights can be toned down. But I don't think it's an overall issue that a solo ship can't beat the campaign. I think it's certain missions. We are not buffing heat damage. We've been nerfing the flamethrower quite a bit.
Yeah. We were actually talking last week about reassessing the balance of all of the campaign missions, all the
Mm-hmm.
combat missions, and seeing does anything need uh, made easier, does anything need made harder? Maybe it's been too easy because the balance of the campaign missions really hasn't been looked at for years effectively. I think some of the Wanderer missions have been looked at, but most have not. Like Free World's campaign has been untouched for the most part. This whole time we've been like buffing and nerfing ships and outfits left and right, and we're talking about making some pretty substantial balance changes for this next update.
Mm.
If stuff isn't like completely broken already, it probably will be like very soon. So we do want to look through the campaigns again and be like, all right, let's reassess. Does this need changed at all? The intention is that you should be able to have one ship of an expected size, and that be the turning point in any battle that you're doing for the campaign. It does get more difficult with the Wanderer campaign, but at least with the Free Wills campaign, that should be a guarantee that one ship of a certain size is enough. And what is that certain size? Well, the amount of money you get in salary from the Free Worlds is supposed to be enough to support the size of ship that you're expected to have at that point. By the end of the campaign, you're expected to have something like a dreadnought. There are points along
Mm.
the campaign. You're expected to start with at least a medium, or no, I think it's at least a light warship. Although I would suggest starting with a medium warship. Then you could get a higher tier medium warship as the campaign progresses. Then at some point grab a lower tier heavy warship. Then by the end of the campaign, you should have a high tier heavy warship. That's what I would suggest for, especially for a first time player, start off with a medium warship. But the expectations, you have at least a light warship when you're starting off, and you end off with a high tier heavy warship. Azure says, I don't think we should force people towards heavy warships necessarily. Using the mobility of a medium warship to win should be an option. Yes, this is true. Which is why we're also looking at speed balance of various ship types.
Speed balance, mass balance.
I will note when I say like the expectation you should start with this and end with that, that's actually MZ's expectation when he first designed the Free World campaign.
Mm-hmm.
We can very easily change that though. And I actually would like for it to be an option, like an actual viable option to not upgrade your ship or not get a bigger ship in order to use the mobility of a smaller ship and have that be enough to win.
Jump over to Twitch chat again here. gonna start. So I see that you're saying last Shogun says I feel like if carriers are already here, we should keep them as is. If I were to redesign the game from the ground up, I wouldn't have dedicated carriers. Instead of having drones fighters be weapons you can fit on any warship. So yeah, we already did mention that. We said that's not really a route we want to go down. It's kind of how Escape Velocity did it, where you could essentially, if you had 40 tons of space, you could slap a fighter bay on any ship, even if it was another fighter with 40 tons.
Recursive
But we,
fighters.
yeah, a fighter bay would be flying around with a fighter bay of itself with 3 of them, but you couldn't put stuff on your escorts in that game. So we do want to keep carriers to be specific to certain ship classes and not open it up to every ship's capability. As for the carriers already here bit, I'm not really sold on that argument because we've changed quite a bit of the ships in the game already, especially on like the alien side. I know humans is kind of more core to the game, but I don't think we should be deciding not to edit something for the sake of keeping it what it was. Like in certain aspects of the game, that's of course an argument for a lot of parts of the game. But we're still in that development stage. I think we can. I mean, personally, I feel like we can get a little bit wilder with our balance changes if we really want to see where things go. But because we've been kind of a little bit reserved on them lately, if you ask me. But I don't know. I feel like we can kind of play around with that, and then Shogun goes on to saying, no one's asking for modules that give extra weapons or turret slots, so I didn't say the same should apply to fighters. Yeah, I mean, like some people actually consider fighters to be turrets themselves in a sense. Um, but typically, if we're talking about hard points and drone bays, they should be static. They shouldn't be something that you can add or remove from a ship. Now, I can see an argument for converting fighter bays into drone bays and vice versa. I mean, we were saying earlier about combining the bays together. I mean, what do you think about a bay conversion outfit, Derpy?
No.
No? All right.
No conversions of anything that deals with a point on a ship.
Yeah, it's like the hard point thing then.
Although Hector asks, drones could probably go in fighter base. I mean, that's something we could think about too. So like fighter base could carry drones and fighters. Drone base could only carry drones.
That's something to consider, I suppose.
Yeah, Doom
More
said it too. Let
carriers.
drones go in either bay type, but fighters only in fighter base. We could. That's something we could definitely look at. Banana asks, what about an outfit that just removes gun ports or turret mounts? No added benefit. I mean, that would just be a weapon with no damage, and it doesn't fire. I mean, I've actually thought of making like a firework cannon. Like it's just like a cool looking effect when it explodes. Like it doesn't actually do damage. That would effectively be the same thing.
We already have that though. It's called a nuke.
You fool.
It removes the gun port. I mean, there's added benefit, but it removes the gun port technically.
It just says firework cannon unlock at the end of Free Worlds. Yeah.
Yippee!
Confetti cannon.
Checkpoint reward, yeah. It's just a little dude in the chat. All right, we're coming up. I was gonna say 50 minutes, but I forgot we started quarter after. We should probably start getting into at least a few questions that have been submitted to the document, and then we can kind of jump back around to what everyone's asking in the Discord.
Yeah, there's not many questions that were submitted this
Yeah.
this period, so but we'll get to what we have. How do you feel about removing Syndicate shield regenerators from Marauder ships and selling them earlier in the checkmate route? Say, right after you choose checkmate. I think that these are not mutually exclusive. So we could do one without needing to do the other. So like for example, we could make it so that checkmate sells the outfits earlier, which I've actually planned on doing when I get around to touching up the checkmate route anyway. But also keep them on the Marauder ships. I know that some of the talk is like, oh, but the fact that they're on the Marauder ships cheapens the reward of the checkmate route, well, you can't get nukes off of Marauder ships.
Hmm.
So I feel like it's not not yet, says Hector. I'm not sure on the focus on the shield regenerators because you can also get the electron beams off of the Marauder ships. Those come from later in the campaign, but the electron beams come. You can get the electron beams regardless of the branch you choose. Whereas the regenerators right now they only ever come from the checkmate route. So the question becomes, for at least for me, why would we focus in on like I get that the regenerators are branch locked, but what's the argument as to why we wouldn't also remove the electron beams?
Hmm.
Sure says, in my opinion, electron beams should be a reconciliation reward and buffed, and give the cloak to both branches. Make the separate reward electron beams versus nukes. I don't think so. I actually
Hmm.
what I actually want to do is make it so the regenerator and the ionic afterburner are openly available after the campaign is over, regardless of the branch you choose. You'd get them earlier if you chose the checkmate route, so you could actually use them during the campaign. But some point after the campaign is over, they'd be for sale regardless, because they're not really game changing outfits at all. Like the shield regenerators that the Syndicate sells, you can very quickly upgrade to alien tech. They're not game changers really. Um, Hector says they're massively better than the regular human shields. Yes, but once you're done the main campaign, what are you doing next? You're probably going on to alien content,
Hmm.
which has better regenerators than the Syndicate stuff. So maybe you're sticking around in human space for a bit longer, but in that case, given the fact that they would still be after the main campaign is done, then yeah, I feel
Hmm.
like it doesn't really matter how if they're like so much better. If it's still like you have to get through the whole campaign to get them, regardless of the branch you chose.
Hmm. I'm cool with maybe changing when they're accessible, but I'm not really for what was the other one? Removing them from Marauder ships. Kind of like you were saying with the electron beams. Um, I know there's a PR open to not only remove them and then also use high tech on Marauders. I'm not really big on that either. That's kind of one. I know that's kind of tangent to the point, but I feel like having those Marauder ships with those weapons before they're actually more obviously present in the game is fine. It's almost like a little Easter egg, and it's almost kind of like a little peek of what's to come, sort of bit. But
Azure asks, "You still plan on Cloak being reconciliation only?" No, that was another one of the changes I wanted to look at with the checkmate route. Like as Azure says here, I'm not sure nukes and cloaks will ever be equivalent unless nukes are made seriously good. Yeah, I don't think that like the cloak is such a good outfit
hmm.
that it's very difficult to say, okay, well, how would we buff the nuke so that it's equivalent to the cloak? Um,
I
Doom
felt
says
like it's
nerf
crazy.
cloak. Yes, we're going to do that too, but
Yeah.
at the moment, that's one of those things that kind of requires engine changes, whereas moving rewards around, that's a lot easier.
Yeah.
Although maybe we say, okay, let's keep the cloak reconciliation, even if it is broken for now, and then later down the road, nerf it so that maybe there is a bit more of a trade-off between cloak and nuke. One of the things I've thought, so actually, when you say nerf the cloak, do you have any thoughts on how we would nerf it? One of
Yeah.
my
There's
thoughts
no.
was to make it so that instead of being a persistent um, effect, like you cloak and then nothing can target you, it would be something more like you hit a button, it consumes energy, or it produces heat or consumes fuel, whatever it is, and then maybe for like the next few seconds or something, you break targeting on all projectiles. You would still be hit by the projectile if it got close to you, but if something was targeting you and tracking you, it would then completely break the lock on that projectile. Because you have to look at how is the cloak used? Why is it given to you? How is it used in the story? And it's used for a single mission so that you can dodge nukes.
Hmm. I see a lot of
Well,
cloaking distance
what I
comments.
just explained is how we could change the cloak that you're given. At that point, it wouldn't really be a cloak. It would be a different type of outfit
Like
entirely.
EM device or something.
Yeah, yeah. But the idea behind it, as to how it's used in the story, would be effectively the same. It's used so that you don't get yourself blown to smithereens, and it's used for that one mission, and that's it. And then you get to keep it.
Hmm.
But I feel like that's something that would still be useful beyond just that one mission, though, as the cloak is now.
Hmm.
Azure says nerfing the Free World's cloak is an implicit buff to the Remnant cloaks, though. I mean, we could nerf the Remnant cloaks in the same way.
Cloaking overall can just be taken a look at.
Yeah,
So
the ability to completely remove target, like make it so that
yeah.
your opponent cannot target you, is powerful. Something we've talked about a lot recently is making it so that being able to play with hit and run tactics is a bit more viable. Being able to actually retreat and heal quicker than your opponent so that you can come back in for another volley and keep damage on them. Yeah, won the first question, Warp. Um, like the cloak is just effectively a glorified hit and run tactic outfit. It makes it so that you you remove yourself from combat. You can no longer be targeted. No one's shooting at you anymore. You take the time to heal, and then you uncloak when you're ready to attack again. It's almost the same thing as teleporting you out of combat for a few seconds and then teleporting you back in when you're ready. So it completely, I don't know which, circumvents is the word I was looking for. It completely circumvents all combat, which is just busted.
Yeah.
So we should definitely have tiers to how, like, quote unquote cloaking works. Like, there's something we should do to this. Either there's a limited amount of time that you can have the cloak up, and then it has a cooldown time after that, or instead of a cloak that pulls you out of combat entirely, it just breaks targeting, like I talked about, or maybe it quite literally is something that teleports you to a random spot in the map, and then you kind of have to move from there and figure out what you're doing.
Mhm.
These sound like abilities to me that we could add to certain outfits. So outfit
Sure.
skill tree.
You hit the cloaking button and you have a 50% chance of exploding. Yeah, let's add some illegal outfits that are cheaper, but a percent chance that knocks your hull down like half.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways we could look at it,
Yeah.
and I feel like we just need to get the ball rolling on at least one idea, and then we can figure out what we do from
Mhm.
there. Now that we're talking about this, like I've tried to like come out of these talks and be like, all right, now what should I work on that we talked about during the discussion,
Mhm.
and this should be one of them next. Jim says, I don't know. I still think that the cloaking distance, or I still like the cloaking distance idea. Gives more room to vary cloaks, but also gives a counter to cloaking if it's used against players. Yeah, that's another
Uh-huh.
idea. I've seen that discussed before. I've thought about it before. Make it so that instead of completely breaking all targeting for everyone, it makes it so that if you're a certain distance away from your target, then you can break targeting with them. But if they get any closer to you, then they would be able to see you again.
It'd require having the AI have a sense to try and follow your last signature, though, so that might take a little bit of
I
coding. I'm
mean,
not sure.
even without that, I think
Yeah,
just that change alone would
but I
be
do
interesting.
think that it's gonna be quite different. It's probably gonna come down to whether or not um like lore based, like what is it supposed to be? Because now we're talking two like very different things. We're talking a cloaking device that's tier based, or we're talking about some sort of target lock jammer that's not necessarily a cloak at all. So that might change how the lore is for that. So
I mean, it's going to change regardless.
yeah, well, I'm just saying it's
It's
like
just how do
it
we
can
want to
go
change it?
two very different routes. It can be retcon to not be a cloak at all, or a different cloak. So I'll go ahead and read the next one if we're done with the cloak. Next question is: I hear there are plans to add new pirate planets in the northern dirt belt. Is anyone working on that? And if so, apologies if there are already a PR by the time this is read. So I maybe have mentioned, or I think Derpy has also mentioned that adding pirate systems to the northern dirt belt is something we might look into, as well as when we were talking before, like maybe a couple in the shell region. If we're talking about the pirate expansions overall, the main areas are the Min area, which is already in the game now. A system, I was gonna say or two, but it's just gonna be a system. Something by what is it again? The Syndicate space with by the other pirate systems, and the Northern Pirate area. So and expanding that to be a little bit bigger. As for these other areas, like by Terminus or by Shala, that's kind of like something we'll maybe look at, but not. It's not like there's no like plans for it. It's just kind of like a maybe thing, perhaps thing. But other than that, it's the big three areas is more what we're looking at first here. Yeah, Guyana's yeah by Guyana. Yeah. Um, real quick, next question is test, and then Warp says you failed the test. All right, test failed.
Okay. How do you get the Navy license? You don't.
Not yet.
Not yet. Plugins, says Hector. Warp says plugins or save or game file edit.
So I actually was on Steam this morning, and this came up on a post where someone was asking, "Will there be more pirate content?" And I had replied to it saying, "We're working on it. Essentially, we're trying to get all these little expansions out." And another comment came in that post was saying like, eventually, like they always say, like how we will eventually get the Navy license, we'll eventually get the Republic campaign, the Syndicate campaign, and then it's a bunch of like eventuallys, but it'll never happen sort of deal. And so like I replied to them, I'm like, the way our development has been lately compared to what it was 4 years ago when we were saying that we're going to do the Republic campaign, I wasn't even there by then, is a lot different nowadays. So with our direction is where our direction is going right now, we're kind of leaning back towards that human content, and we're still like Derpy's still working around the rest of Free Worlds too. So we're getting up there. I'd like to see at least some movement on the other campaign or campaigns within the year, but it all just comes down to our free time and what else we're working with. So like right now, the biggest thing is balance PRs. So
Found the comment.
did you
By the way,
found it?
since I have mod perms on Steam, so I can see deleted comments.
Oh, they deleted it instantly. After I replied to them, I was like, be patient with us. Things are changing, and people understand that. When I replied to them,
Post the
instantly
screenshot.
deleted it. Instantly deleted their comment.
I will censor this user's name. Actually, yeah. Let me crop out the name here, and I'll post a
Yeah.
screenshot of the
Like the concern is valid. Like we haven't like it's always been a question
unpersoned
like over the
suspect.
years, but to just kind of like go around and saying, but they promised that this and that, and we'll never get it. It's like that's not really helping anybody. Yeah, yeah. There's a comment in my reply to it.
I wrote that, says a share. Planned. Oh yes, there's plans. Like having a Navy license is planned someday, and that was 4 years ago. I'm sure they'll eventually have a way to buddy up to the Alpha's plan someday, or a trans-dimensional wormhole that lets you engage / harvest Imperial Star Destroyers, the Federation / Borg, or the Reapers, or to colonize uninhabited worlds and set up a rim world. And or Factorio-based system for your own private economy. The imagination of endless, or the imagination is endless. The sky's the limit. Still, that all takes coding and time, years of waiting for pirate and navy stories. So bottom of the line, the new systems are a little extra tribute. Check out how much you can mine, in particular if you start a new game and hang out in CAF, making $1 million a day. No real reason to care about the rest of the galaxy's problems.
Yeah. And my reply is a little long, so we're not going to read that. But essentially, don't need to be sarcastic. We understand the concern. We're working on it. Things are different nowadays. Please be more constructive about it, or don't, and go elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, when we say we're working on the pirate stuff, like that is actually actively
Yeah,
being worked on now. There are changes being
yeah.
merged to the game. So,
And regarding the other human stuff, these balance changes that have been bouncing around the last few weeks and months are pretty important, I feel, to get in before we go back and revisit the Free Worlds campaign and try and make a whole campaign based on that balance, etc. Regarding another human garbage.
all the effort spent on human garbage makes me cry. One of our favorite Endless Sky copy pastas.
Yeah.
Now we're just memeing in chat here.
Yeah. But no, we're kind of bouncing back to human content again and then getting ready to open it up. And that's not to say we can't work on other stuff that's not specifically the main plot, but yeah.
All right, move on to the next question then. All right, I'll take that as a yes.
Oh, did you want me to read it?
That was a question. Like, should
Oh,
we move on to the next question? What are your
yeah.
thoughts on the concerns of new players and initial playthroughs? Some of them seem to be oftentimes very lost, having to look up a lot of content online to understand it, but it seems like the developers don't believe this is an issue slash say this is an intended experience. Well, I don't know where we've ever said it's intended. If anything,
Um,
like we often do talk about like, hey, there are things that can be confusing. There are things that we don't explain well to the player. The
mhm.
main thing is just like how do we fix things so that the early game is more understandable to new players without it being like too like one of the things I like to avoid is being too video gamey, too tutorial-y. There
Yeah.
is actually an aspect of we're not here to hold your hand, so maybe that's
Mhm.
what isn't meant by us saying it's an intended experience. Like we're not going to explain everything to you. There is a lot of stuff that you are going to only learn through exploring.
Yeah.
But in terms of gameplay mechanics, that is stuff that we do try to explain to the player, and a lot of it we do explain. I just feel like with a lot of people they don't remember that we explained it to them
Yeah.
because there are people who are like, "Hey, why is this mechanic never explained?" And I'm like, "Here is the exact help dialogue that shows up when you first start the game that explains this game mechanic to you." So at that point, like, is it us or is it you?
Yeah. Like we do have I know like a lot of the complaints is that the tutorial system is bad when well it's kind of hard to talk about that because Endless Sky doesn't necessarily have a tutorial system. We have those messages that pop up that you were saying,
The help
and
dialogues,
we
yeah.
have and we have a little intro mission. Same thing. The Escape Velocity Nova did have this, where a pilot, a guy named James, we all love James, will just kind of tour you around human space a little bit. But the thing with Endless Sky, and this is said a lot, is that it's open ended. I did mention this somewhere. I think it was on GitHub somewhere to a reply, but this is kind of subjective. But although there is a main plot to Endless Sky, there's like a main campaign. A decent amount of players don't play it for the main campaign. They like a lot of people they'll want to play it because they like space trucking games. They want to do the whole get a big cargo fleet, go back and forth. It's relaxing. Some people play it purely for the combat. They don't care about the story whatsoever. They just want to dunk on some people. They want to dominate some planets. Some people are in it specifically for the lore. They want to hear all that story and that deep lore. So to an extent, yeah, we have mechanics and kind of like these little guidance cues for like the basis of the game, but the game at large is kind of more of a explore your own story bit. And this has been brought up too, but the kind of idea where we have quests and they like we should have like a quest guide or we should list them and say here comes the next mission or you're lacking in this mission or have this all written down somewhere isn't really kind of what we're trying to portray here. I understand that that might be helpful in some ways, but it's not. It's not really what we're trying to put forth here within this guy. So, but we do have facets to help out, and we in the future will probably add a little bit more of those, but not anything strictly like do this to do this, and you do this mission, and 100% chance of doing this will reward you with 100% chance of that. So it is kind of random experience, and that's partly the intent there if we're talking about intent. So yeah. Yeah, capturing ships. Yeah, some people play the game just for that too. They like looking at the cool ships. I mean, we like making cool ships.
Edmar says, I was about 8 months into playing before I learned about the speed up time function.
Whoa.
Yeah, I don't know if we have that in a help dialogue anywhere. And I'll note that Zipper took a screenshot of the section, the controls. If you, by default, if you hit F1, it'll pop up help dialogues for whatever situation you're
Mhm.
in. It'll change depending on the panel that you're looking at, like where in the UI you are, and if you're disabled or not.
Mhm.
So that's a way to recall the help dialogues if ever you forget anything. But
I'll say that a portion of In the Sky was built, like I said, around the Escape Velocity series, so some of that kind of comes from knowledge of that game. It's not our one and all intended audience, but a lot of the people who are like more knowledgeable about the game are usually coming from that game series. That's not to say we can't make it easier to understand for other people, though. So,
mhm. So there was actually a thread on Steam recently, like within the past few days, that I saw where someone was like, "I'm really struggling with the game. Like, I'm having difficulty fighting, and I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to use the arrow keys and the mouse at the same time." And for that case, my first thought was, well, if you don't like the controls, you can change the controls. I do want us to have a default control scheme that's WASD and have optional like other control schemes that we provide,
yeah.
um, like like preset control schemes. Yeah, just
Mhm.
as we should have WASD default. Yeah. When are you getting joystick support? Never. But it at least for me, like I don't know about you guys. Whenever I start a new game, one of the very first things I do is open the settings, is open the controls. Like I don't even look like the tutorials usually show you some of the controls, but not everything. So I always go to the controls. I look around. I'm like, okay, what's bound to what? Like, is there anything I want to change right off the bat? Uh, is there anything I feel like would be easier for me? So like that's the first thing I did when I played Endless Sky. I launch. I tried to use WASD to move. Nothing was working. I hit arrow keys, realized the arrow keys are movement. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna spend like 15 minutes changing my controls. So basically the very first thing I did after buying my Star Barge was I took off, couldn't move, found how to move, changed controls, done.
Mhm.
15
Well,
minutes says Hector. I spent a lot of time thinking about this. Is that too much time for you? Is that too little?
a lot of controls or complaints with the game
There were
is
like
the
6 controls when you
controls,
played.
and it's like we could change, or you could change the controls if they suck, you could change them if you
Yeah.
don't like them. But yeah, I'm totally down for a preset. I'm coming from the EV series, so I like the arrow key. Don't at me. But if we default to WASD, yeah, I definitely would want us to have at least presets for those who are coming from EV, those who aren't, those who are weird and do some weird thing with like SDF or something. Some people do that. But yeah.
Edmar says, "Oh, that and press backspace to stop on the spot. I had to counter boost and hover over a planet. Or always had to counter boost and hover over a planet. Yeah,
I
that's
will
actually
admit,
something that was added later.
yeah.
Like that wasn't
That
always a
one I
feature.
didn't know for the longest time either, I'll admit.
Yeah, but if anyone hasn't checked yet, if you have not been to the controls panel lately, we now have tooltips for every single control when you're hovering over it, and it will tell you, hey, with this control, if you hold shift and hit the control, something different will happen. Or if you hold control and hit the key, something different will happen. It tells you all that stuff now.
So I want to jump back up here to a comment Lost Cause said. I asked them to expand upon their point, and then they did. Um, Lost Cause says if you lose ships, this is referring to fleets aren't fun to manage, and solo ship flying is not possible. And we were talking earlier about how the balance can be adjusted a bit, but otherwise it is possible. They go ahead and say if you lose ships, you have to go back through the process of buying and capping a new ship, travel across the galaxy to refit them, and they die so easily. Um, but that's the first part of it. So I want to do like little bits of this. So the process of buying and capping a new ship and across the galaxy. If you're talking about across the galaxy, this is sounding like it's already a bit outside of the human campaign. Which, if we're more inside the human content of the game, it really isn't all that hard to rebuy a ship or to purchase something. If you lose your main ship, I mean, you're dead. You have to restart the game. But if you're talking about escorts, yeah, it's a little bit more difficult to handle. And once you get to a point where you have like tens of hundreds of escorts, that's not really endless skies intended gameplay experience. And it is going to be a nuance or a nuisance, yes, and that's kind of just how that is. They say playing solo is heavily discouraged. The missions, while possible, could be done solo. It's extremely difficult, and only good solo ships are remnant ships. I think you'll find that a lot of people disagree on that point. If we're talking like human content still, there's a lot of good human ships to solo the campaign, and going back to the balance missions, yes, we can always adjust those. But I wouldn't say that solo play is heavily discouraged. If anything, that's the intended experience of Endless Sky. But I do understand that it might be hard for I mean like no like flame on this, but like it might be harder for some players than it is for others. So we can always look at balance with missions again, of course. And then they go on to say, I suppose the game is combat and fleet based. No, it's not fleet based. But the AI is just terrible, and making fleets management is very difficult. My most success with a fleet is buying a ton of Starlings and cloak whenever the shields go down. So again, that kind of goes back into the game isn't based around fleets. It's not we're not an RTS kind of game where you're commanding your fleet. You have to replace them, and you should have like an efficient way to do so. Um, Once we start talking big fleets, it's more of a tag on to the gameplay than it is an intended experience of the game. So we can always, yeah, like Azure says, I think small fleets are actually really fun to play with. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Something with the I keep going back to the EV series. The EV series had a fleet limit, which we're not doing, um, of 6 ships. I tend to limit myself to those 6 ships, and I I have a pretty fun experience with that if I'm not solo playing already. But beyond like a small amount like that, when we're getting into massive fleet battles, that's not really something we're kind of gearing towards. So, but
Hector
just
points out the fewer escorts you have, the easier it is to keep from losing them. So when you
yeah.
say you buy a ton of escorts, a ton of starlings, will define a ton. If you
Mhm.
have a ton of ships, like 20 or something like that, and you lose one of them, well, you still have 19 ships left. Like, if you're able to support 20 ships, how difficult is it really to replace one? And like, how much do you actually care that you lost one ship out of 20?
Now, again, I'm speaking mostly for the human content, and then the Wanderer and Korra stuff again can look at a little balance. But I'm not. I don't really know all that much outside of that, and anything really outside of that, it's like Coalition and high content that can still be done with just a few ships. I don't know so much about Remnant content though, so I can't speak on that. But you can definitely play with a smaller amount of ships.
Dashkill says, I nabbed 26 Tempest at one point so I could grab the forbidden pug ship, but that was intentional to generate gameplay. Yeah, that sounds that sounds about right.
Your favorite fleet design? This is Lost Cause again. Is it
Mm-hmm.
Serad Sojourner and the 2 Iraq Freighters? Yeah, that sounds pretty fun. Nice little cargo fleet. A lot more uh, acceptable to me than it would be with the basic. Oh yeah, but I got my 50 deep. What are
Deep
they? Deep
rivers.
rivers going around high space, and it's like, yeah, you're not that special.
Edmar on
A lot of people.
Twitch says, the game is not about controlling fleets. Awkwardly looks at my 30 plus warship fleet, all outfitted for disabling ships and flagship for boarding. Yeah.
Well, you could totally have a fleet, and what we've also said is we're not going to limit fleets either, because I mean a lot of people enjoy that aspect of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know some people actually do want us to limit them. Like, I think the very most we'd ever do, if at all, is like a game rule that you can toggle on for yourself, which you can kind of already do by just not getting more than a few ships. But we're not just going to remove fleet gameplay either if we're not focusing on it too. So like you can,
Yeah.
it's entirely acceptable that you enjoy fleet gameplay. But
The way I describe this is we like to give you a lot of options for how you play the game, and one of
mhm.
those options is to have a large fleet. But just because you're able to use a large fleet doesn't mean we're going to spend a lot of time making a large fleet easy to use. There are
Yeah.
pain points to having a large fleet, but that's your trade off. Like, you have massive DPS. You are going to roll over any combat mission that you ever have to encounter if you have a massive fleet. But trying to have every single ship in your fleet survive is difficult. Trying to outfit all of your ships, if you have a bunch of different types of ships, and it's not just one uh, fitting for every single one, that can be difficult. Sorting your ships in your player info panel, that can be difficult because you can't like multi-select ships and drag them all. Now, some of these things are quality of life improvements that we can probably make, but
Mhm.
we're just not focusing on making them because we're not really expecting the average person to have 20, 30, 50, 100 ships. Now, if somebody
Mhm.
goes and does it, and so if somebody goes and pull requests a change to allow you to multi-drag ships in the outfitter or in the player info panel, I think we actually might already have multi-dragging in the. No, I don't think we do in the player info panel. Do we? I always
I
forget. I know in the
don't.
outfitter and the shipyard we don't. But if somebody
Yeah.
did that, then we would look at it and potentially merge it. Whoops, says
Mhm.
there is in the player info panel. Okay. Um, one of the ones people have said, oh, make folders in the player info panel so I can more easily scroll through
Mm.
everything. We're not adding folders to the, or at
If you're
least not looking to add
scrolling,
folders to the player info
it's a
panel.
little bit out of our.
Yeah, like if you have such a massive list that it is painful you to scroll through how many ships you have, you're going a bit further than we're expecting you to. But
Yeah, just
yeah.
so I'd just say look forward to us adjusting some balance in some fights, but otherwise, fleet isn't like our biggest point. So
Uh, the weirdnet says, would you accept a pull quest that allows you to buy customized ships at any shipyard, assuming you have all the outfits in the correct hulls available? It sounds like a loadout system. Like if you think of a first person shooter with different classes or loadouts, but like you buy the loadout, it's
Mhm.
basically saying like, hey, if you have the credits and the outfits and ships available, and you have this loadout defined, hit one button and the ship is instantly made instead of you needing to buy the outfits and then buy the ship separately and then put the outfits on the ship, right?
Mhm. Isn't this like that one PR that's to create a ship build and have that saved for you to purchase later or
I
something
don't think
like
it was
that?
ever saved. It was just a testing area to look at the stats.
Oh yeah, it's kind of different then. I'm still
Now,
not huge on that, but that one's going back and forth.
yeah, Bruno says, I'm thinking it would reduce the pain if you lose a customized ship. Yeah, it would be a way to like one click uh, remake a ship.
Yeah.
The question would to me would be like, how does the UI look? How do you save a customized ship? Where are they stored? How do
It'd
you
have to.
pull them back up when you want to make one? Because I don't think
Yeah.
we would just add them to the shipyard. Because then you would have like customized stuff mixed in with like stock stuff, which should look odd.
Mhm.
So it would potentially be its own section of the shipyard that you could toggle over to.
Putting that one last time in case people
And
are
then
coming
instead
in
of
late.
buy and sell, the buttons would be save and use or something like that. Save and build. Hector says, what happens if you're missing a single outfit? Like you have everything else available except a single keystone or something. I mean, that would be something for us to figure out.
Mhm.
You die, says Warp. I feel like the best way to implement this would be if you're missing anything, as long as you have the ship hull, and yeah, as long as you have the ship hull, if you hit like build on a loadout, it would create a ship with the outfits that you do have available to you. If you have no outfits available to you and you have the ship hull, well then you just have an empty ship hull when you hit that button. So that way, just because you're missing one outfit doesn't mean you can't build the rest of the ship. I'm leaning back toward the sandbox shipyard idea.
I just it really has to be done in a way that's good, that looks good on the UI. I feel
Mm-hmm.
right now, like what it is in the PR isn't exactly how I would have it, but I'm not entirely against it. It's just kind of the oddball thing to me. But if the others are kind of like, oh, that'd be a good, there's like various reasons to add it, then yeah.
All right.
Oh, someone just asked, did the ship folders PR get merged?
With
Oh, I
ship
don't.
folders PR.
They can't hear us, but we're not really looking at ship folders.
The last Shogun on Twitch says, one thing I will say, I feel like the game is focused around small fleet combat, and this is actually trying to tying back into the fighter thing. There really needs to be some kind of way to program AI, even if it's basic stuff like aggressive, defensive, evasive stances.
Mm.
Something to stop, say, or to say stop long-range ships from ooga boogaing toward the enemy, or or zippy ships from face-tanking enemies at close range. The
Someone,
idea of stances has been brought up before, and I think we said no. But general AI improvements for a ship to be like, all right, I recognize that I have long range weapons, therefore I should leave. I should fly away, or I recognize that I am quick, therefore I should use hit and run tactics. Like that stuff we are looking at just baking in. So it's not something you would control, like how exactly each individual ship behaves, but it's more so you would outfit a ship in a certain way, then the ship would try to use its outfits to the best of its ability. Lost Cause says, sorry if I sound too critical. I just find some parts of this game annoying. That's fine. I mean, hey, that's what we're here for in these chats. Tell us what you don't like. Tell us what you do like,
yeah.
and we'll talk about it. See if there's anything we can look at. I will note that sometimes, like, I understand that there can be pain points in the game, but for me, it's more like my bigger question is, okay, how do we like what do we actually do about that? You can say like, oh, this part of the game sucks. It's like my immediate retort is like, okay, how do we fix it? And if we're coming up with ideas but none of them work, that doesn't mean that the concern isn't necessarily valid. You know, sometimes sometimes there are certain things where I'm like, you know what, like we're probably never going to change that. Like that's just kind of how the game is designed. Sorry if you don't like it that way, but there are definitely a lot of things where it's like, hey, this sucks. I'm like, oh, I agree with you, but like, what do we do about it?
Marcus wants more space fauna. Hey, I already gave you space whales.
Doom says,
Go
seems
look for
reasonable
them.
to let the player select some of the options from our existing list of AI personalities for their escorts to use. Potentially. But, I
Mm.
mean, we could potentially look at something like that. But again, it's one of those not necessarily high priority things.
Yeah. All right, let's jump to the next question on our list here. How are tiers determined? How are they used to determine how ships and outfits should be balanced?
Tiers we pull out of a hat, and then we balance things relative to the other ships and outfits of a given tier. How's that sound?
Warp, I feel like you have a good perspective on this question if you want to answer it. That was Warp leaving? No, it wasn't. You can read your answer. All right, where is it here? How are tier? Okay, so this is Warp's response to the question in little sections here. How are tiers determined? Humans are tier one. Korath, Automata, and Wanderers are about tier two with minor exceptions. The tier that anything else is labeled is based on how it compares to these two sets. The High, Exiles, Civilian Coalition, and most remnant technology is generally somewhere between tiers one and two. Heliarch ships are a big step up from Wanderer and Korath Automata, but not as great as those ships not as great as those ships are from human ships, so we call them tier 2.5. As for new things, generally whoever's making them will decide where on the scale they want them to go, and then balance their outfits and ships to provide the desired level of performance compared to existing things. And then regarding how are they used to determine how ships and outfits should be balanced, the tier that some outfit or ship should be at gives you a reference of how it should be compared to other things. A tier 1 outfit or ship should probably be similar in overall performance to human things. A tier 2 outfit or ship should probably offer similar overall performance to Wanderer or Korath Automata items, etc.
The TLDR of it is it's a relative measure.
Oh, you posted it. Okay. Let her read it.
I mean, we would have read it out loud anyway. But
That's true. Good shot.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's a relative measure.
Yeah.
And it's also important to note that when we talk about tiers of a faction, it's more of an average of all of the faction's capabilities. So when we say the Wanderers are tier 2 and humans are tier 1, what that does not say is every single thing that the Wanderers do is better than what the humans do. Because if you actually look, humans actually have better cooling than what the Wanderers have. You can make other comparisons to other factions across the game, but just because a faction has a higher tier than another faction does not mean that all of the things from that faction are
Mhm.
necessarily better than everything from the factions below it.
So that said, we wouldn't have a faction say we have a given tier one and tier two faction. The tier one faction could have elements that are somewhat closer to tier two, but we wouldn't have the entire faction or like 80% of it be leaning towards that, but maybe like certain elements of it. So like an example I could throw out here is like something I want to be doing with the Gegno is that they have really good mining outfits, better than in efficiency than almost any other mining outfit in the game with the perspective. Uh, I'm forgetting the word right now. Prospector value. But that doesn't mean the Gegno are tiered infinite in mining or something like that. But I'm also not going to give the Gegno around tier 1.5 or 2 engines, tier 2 guns, and then maybe a tier 1 battery or something like that. So there is a little bit of flex room, but
I'm going to
it
wag my
shouldn't
finger at that.
be
Do not
as
describe individual outfits or ships as tier 1 or tier 2. It's the entire faction that is tier 1 or tier 2. It's
yeah.
a factional measure.
That's
So I
that's
wouldn't say, "Oh, my faction has tier 2 this and tier 1 that and tier
yeah
1.5 this." No, no, no. The entire faction, what is their tier?
yeah
Then
that's
you average their yeah, Benny says Derpy has to creed. You average out the power of all of their stuff and say, "Okay, here's where they land." And then
yeah.
you kind of have a range from there that you can mess with. Azure says
So
this
like
makes balance harder, to be honest, but it's not balance. It's a description of what you've already balanced. You do what you want in terms of balance, and then post hoc say, okay, this is tier 2. Because then combat is just
what I
a,
was
or tier is just a combat metric. Well, I mean, yeah, kind of, yeah.
yeah that's kind of what I was just trying to say with that though is that it's an overall measurement of a faction. It's not to look at every specific outfit individually in reference to that.
We're not answering the next question, says Warp. It's not a question, it's a link. Submit your question, please, not a link. I'm not clicking on suspicious links.
I hate that Discord site.
Discord? What is this? Some sort of keylogger?
What's
Somebody linked a Google Doc? Yeah, here's my thesis on Endless Sky. Please answer. Please respond. Academics, please respond. All right. Well, next question.
New question YouTube video. What is this? Oh my god.
It's been about a year since Amazonite's villain arc. What has improved with regards to the development process? What do you think still needs worked on? Hmm.
Mm, is that a question for us or like you guys speaking out loud?
Sure says, when will you plan to enter the next villain phase? Next phase of the villain arc. So as far as how things have improved, um, I think especially with these chats, there's been a lot more communication on things. And with there being more communication and more talking about certain pain points of the game, there actually has been more movement on
Mm-hmm.
addressing those areas of the game. Discord as a whole is very amorphous. There's chats going on all the time. Uh, we can't possibly follow up with everything. But by having this very concrete block of time where it's like, okay, anyone can show up, anyone can submit questions. Even if you can't show up live, you can at least submit questions beforehand and we can answer them and you can check them out later. Um, that does actually give us uh, bit more velocity to what we're doing here. I don't know how else to describe it. And then beyond that, I think that over the course of this last year, I feel like the us on the dev team have really consolidated our efforts. Like we've really gotten into a groove of things. We really know what we're doing,
Mm-hmm.
what we want to do, who's doing what. Because we've also started having weekly chats with each other
Yeah.
every Sunday around this time. We get together. We look at, okay, what's new as of this last week in terms of pull requests and issues. Um, Are there any big things we want to talk about? Sometimes we'll schedule a certain day to be like, all right, on this day we're going to discuss this thing and put a lot of focus on it. And that's had things moving along. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Anything else from you guys that you can think of
I
that you would say
mean,
things have improved on? Then we can talk about what we still hate.
if we're still talking about improvements, I mean, yeah, I think you said most of it. We're actually kind of taking time to, in some facets, write down what we're talking about as well. We've made documents. You got the ones on GitHub with like the manifesto. We're looking to do a vision document soon here that we've put the outline together. Just kind of getting these like more official documents out there is, I think, helping quite a bit. And it doesn't really harm either. But I feel like we've been a lot more communicative since a couple years ago, even when I wasn't around. So pretty much everything you just said. There's definitely been less arguments too. So I wouldn't really say it was like any like hardcore argumentation word between the devs. It's kind of more debate, but we've definitely kind of done a lot more bouncing back and forth lately too. So sometimes like I'll want to do something in a PR, and then Worf will be like, that doesn't make sense for this, that, and this and that. And sometimes Derpy will want to add something to the game, and then maybe Wizrat will be like, oh, I'm not so sure about that. And so I feel like we've definitely come a lot farther than when we were a year ago, and that's only going to continue. Warp, anything from you?
Hector says, I think you're getting better at taking a firmer stance on things.
I feel like that's kind of like we're getting a little bit like better, I guess, at it, and I think in some areas we could improve on that still.
Warp says, you don't want me to answer the question on that, or that question in here. Replay the last 2 minutes. There's a stream for a reason. All right. Well, in terms of
We are.
what do
Oh,
we
sorry.
still think needs improved? What still needs work? I think that one of the things we could improve on is Probably focus.
Hmm.
I feel like at the moment, like we're starting to um, get more focused on things generally, but I feel like there is still a bit of a scattered brainedness to all of it. Um,
Yeah, that's sort of what I'm kind of on the side of for in terms of improvement. It's kind of that idea that we do a lot of discussion, and yeah, it's been a huge benefit that we do more of that lately. But I feel like we do a lot of discussion, but we can still improve on, like, how do I put this? Like, not necessarily testing, but not kind of throwing caution to the wind a little bit, but not like too much. Like we've done so in the past, where we've done a little bit too much of that. But I feel like lately we haven't done like enough of that, where we could be kind of like, as a game in development, I feel like we can explore changes to balance or how things work in the game a little bit more openly, and just kind of see how they go, and still have our decisions on it in the end. But so, like, for example, all this balance stuff we've been talking, and I know Derp, you've been saying you just kind of want to push through and see how it goes, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think if we're not sure where it's going to go, I mean, we're not sure where it's going to go if we don't start it either. So, um, anything else?
something that where is it? Benny says communicating the discussion to the contributors. Yes, we
Mhm.
have been picking out a few individuals to talk with more one-on-one, basically just Lake. I would like to do that more often with more people, though.
Mhm.
Like, find like if somebody has a bigger pull request or they may have bigger plans, talk with them directly. Like, hey, let's hop into a voice chat and have a back and forth in this instead of just being a pull request. And then something a bit more public where, like, hey, just anyone come in, anyone can chat. Um,
Yeah.
Kind of similar to these,
Occasionally,
but with open comms for everyone who's
yeah,
involved.
occasionally we'd kind of hop in. It's usually Fridays it happened,
Yeah.
where we kind of be discussing things with Lake, or I might be talking to Doom about balance, and some people would hop in to the voice channel, some of the core members, and I feel like we could maybe do that a little bit more often. We do have these events monthly for everyone, so I don't think it would hurt to kind of open up a little bit more as well to core members and etc.
All right, people still going on this. Pull requests are public. You can talk to us on those all the time. You can have input on pull requests all the time. Everything goes through a pull request. I don't know where this idea of there has been less contributions from others are coming from. We have Jur and Rydian talking about this. Please point to specifics. Please stop generally waving your hand and saying, oh, things have gotten worse over the past year. Hector says it was actually made impossible to make changes without a pull request. Yeah, everything goes through pull requests. Pull requests are open. We leave them open for some time. People discuss them. Anyone can open any pull request they want. Sure, some people open pull requests based on what we talk about, but we're not stopping you from opening anything else.
Also, it's not ever that no dev is going to look at them and no input or insight. We look at every single PR. We leave our comments on the PRs. We don't ignore a PR because we don't want to look at it or we don't think it fits in the game. We will comment on it. We will give our reasons and we do discuss them.
And I saw someone say earlier that there are finished pull requests that languish for months without attention, which really snuffs out any interest in contributing to the game. Please point to them.
Yeah,
We have
that's not really
160 open.
true.
We try to get to what we can.
Yeah.
If there's stuff that's finished, well, define finished. From my perspective, if it was finished, it would be merged. A pull request opener can say, I have finished working on this, but that doesn't mean the pull request is actually in a finished state.
Yes, there's an Android version. It's kind of third party supported though. It's not official to the game. Answering he says comp. Excuse me.
Azure says, I think you can take a step back from just looking at pull requests. For example, the discussion to focus on pirate pull requests and give them priority wasn't really made with the input from the community, and no one really found out about it until the decision had been made. But what does that mean, though? Like, I feel like you're just saying words.
There's no priority on that content. I'll say I'm prioritizing it. I'm working on it in vanilla, but it's not the overall dev team prioritizing pirate content, looking at that, making that decision for the entire game's development.
Yeah, also, Doom says, what? You want them to announce when a decision will be made that before they make it? You're like, yeah, like, you'll learn about things when we decide to do them. Like, we decided to, or well, Sog decided to focus on pirate stuff. Therefore, you saw him focusing on pirate stuff.
You're saying, are you asking if the community should decide what PRs we look at? I'm not entirely in agreement to that. That's not really how game development, or at least how we're doing it goes, and I don't see how it's been. I'm not in agreement that it's detrimental to our development.
I'll also point out that there was a lot of activity on the pirate pull request aside from just Sog. So there, if anything, there was community input in saying, "Hey, we want this to be done." It just didn't involve you specifically. More devs? Question mark. We could add more devs. It's just a question of who would they be. But then we get the complaints of, well, if you make all the good content creators devs, and then that makes things worse. You're really putting us in a catch-22 here with some of this feedback that some people give. You don't have enough devs to look at pull requests to do this stuff. Therefore, you should add more devs. Then we add more devs, and then people are like, "Oh, but now the devs are all only focusing on their own stuff." It's like, well, that's because the devs were previously content creators who were doing the stuff that everyone wanted.
Probably Canadian says when someone posts a PR and there's no activity, it feels like it's been shelved.
Shelved.
Shelved. I see. There's not much we can do in the venue of that. I do feel bad when that's the case, but it's never an intention, and it's just a matter of fact that we can't get to every single PR, and we can't just drop the ones we're currently looking at to leave a comment on another. It should just kind of be a matter of if it's open and we haven't made comments on it, it will be like that. If it's not closed, if it's not unlikely, um, I do think that this vision document that we've been working on will help a little bit with that to kind of have like a little area of here's a list of things that have been brought up and we're not really keen on. But outside of that, I don't think it's too harmful to have a PR stay open. Now, if it's open for say 4 years or something like that, yes. But it's kind of natural for PRs to be open for a decent amount of time unless it's addressing an area of focus or if it's addressing a bug that's important or something like that. Yeah, Ziproot. Ziproot's posted an image of milestoning PRs.
Me milestoning my own pull request, and then I keep kicking it back because I'm looking at
Yeah,
other people's stuff.
yeah. So
What do
like
they
at
mean
the
by
end of the
this?
day, yeah, at the end of the day, we're still developing for the game. We still look at PRs, and progress is still moving forward, and we're still producing content that everybody enjoys and people still have feedback on for sure. And I don't think there's any like inherently harshness in what's and how things are going. There are aspects that can be improved, but I don't think it's to a point where this is detrimental and it's affecting the game's development in a way that's negative. Probably Canadian says maybe a comment like "still not dead" might help. Um, we are like, it's kind of that infinite what's the term? Like in shows where like there's like a character's like sitting on a line and behind that line everything's falling back behind them. It, so with PRs, like obviously there's always going to be new PRs opening a lot, especially earlier in the year and at certain times in the year. Eventually, we want to bridge that gap. I can't ever say when that will happen because it's a very hard um, kind of timeline to put on. But I personally would like us to be able to get to a point where we can comment a bit more actively on PRs. It's just the sheer volume of them right now makes that a little difficult. And if we were to go around and say, we'll still look at this, this PR is not dead, or we're still interested in this on every PR, it would be kind of going a bit out of our way. And I'm not trying to say that in like a harsh way, but it's just kind of like a volume kind of metric thing. So
The Last Shogun says, "Man, game dev sounds like a headache. I don't know how you lads handle it." I will say you're only seeing a glimpse of
yeah.
the whole situation, and we're a very specific situation of game dev as a whole. We're open source, and it's a hobby project for everyone. No one's making money on this, so it's a very
Mm-hmm.
different situation than like if we were taking donations and some of us were working on this full time, or if this were closed source and it was a hobby, or closed source and it was a job for everyone because we were charging for the game. So the fact that it's an open source hobby project kind of brings its own difficulties to the table. Uh, we kind of try and work through those as best we can, but
Yeah.
you know. Also, I really want to dispel this idea that contributors and reviewers have no direction on the no input on the direction of the game. You guys can talk to us. You guys like I know Sog is often in rooms. I like to talk to the reviewers and some of the higher tier contributors, so to speak, um, when I'm able to. Like, if there's some direction of the game you guys are thinking of, like, talk to us about it.
Mm.
Like,
A lot of
if
the time,
anything, the like fighters has been in discussion for a long time, and now we're actually setting our sights on it. So is that not, in a sense, a way in which the community has dictated the direction of the game? I feel like it dictated, says Benny. I feel like there's a degree to which like we decide to look at things because there's been enough discussion about them from contributors and from reviewers, and then when we start looking at them, there are some people who are like, "Oh, why did you suddenly start looking at this? Why are you dictating the direction of the game?" It's like, well, we didn't just come
Mhm.
up with this idea in a vacuum to start working on this. It's because people
Mhm.
have been talking about it, and it's like, all right, let's set our sights on this. Let's put our weight behind this to actually get things moving. So it's not like we just woke up and were like, with no input at all, I want to look at balance, or I want to look at fighters, or I want to look at pirate stuff. No, there was already a pre existing interest in that area of the game from a group of people, and we're now getting behind it with them.
Mhm.
There are certain things that in a vacuum we think of, or like among ourselves we think of, and we're like, hey, what if we did this? What if we did that? But then even then, those things still eventually get into the wider public with discussions with other people. Like, what do you guys think about this? So
And for
just
example,
really
like
not sold on this idea.
say I were to open a PR on some new pirate systems as kind of a and we didn't talk about it a whole lot, and I just decided, hey, maybe we can have a few pirate systems here. That's not an indication of, oh, the dev team opened a pirate PR. This is likely to get in because the dev team want that in. I've had many PRs that other devs don't agree with, or even straight up slapped unlikely on it, like the second it came out. I remember I made a PR to nerf the cloaking device to not be able to be put on every ship. I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I didn't know how the code worked. But Derpy's like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
I opened a PR that gave combat drone bays to the Airy, and Anarchist was like, that doesn't really make sense in the lore of the game. And so it may appear that if we're working on something as the devs of the game, well, we're labeled the devs of the game, so we can't really get rid of that kind of um, perception. That doesn't necessarily mean we just decided to focus on that one bit, or we decided on that in a place no one else could see. We go about it the same way we would go about any other person's content or pull requests, and there might be areas of the game that yes we kind of have a direction towards, like we're saying with the balance, or like I'm working with the pirate stuff, but it's not that it's how do I put this? It's not like a huge detriment, and it's not that we're choosing to do that because we don't want to look at other things, or because we haven't looked at other things, and or because we have no intention of looking at other things. It's not. It's definitely not the case. Kind of what Derpy was saying earlier with him kind of being busy. I talk a lot in the Discord because I have the capacity to do so. I do a lot of stuff on my computer. I can open it up on the side sometimes. Sometimes I'm probably talking a little bit too much into it. Um, a lot of the other devs don't have a whole lot of free time to talk to people. So these campfire chats, these weekly discussions we have with each other, this isn't us to say talking about things in a venue that no one else can hear about, because eventually they'll be on GitHub, or they'll be in PRs, they'll be in issues, they'll be on stream. We don't have a lot of time to sit and kind of explore the entire game's development with the entire community in a way that would, I feel, resolve this concern that we don't necessarily agree about here. But it's not a matter of we don't want to, it's that we don't have a lot of time to do that. And the time that we do have to talk to the community, to work with these PRs, to work on development, we do that with the community, the development, the other people, the contributors. So
Hector says, I feel like it's less. We're decreeing that this next update will be a balance update and more. There are a lot of balance pull requests open, and we should try and focus on those and get those taken care of for this update. Yeah.
yep.
Zipper says, I thought Windows XP support was removed. I don't think we ever explicitly supported Windows XP. It was more so that someone managed to get it to work or something like that.
It's something on
There was also GOG, like that
yeah,
was not set by us. That was something that GOG did for some reason,
yeah.
saying that it could run on Windows XP when we never actually said it would do that. So it's not like we ever gave it support and then removed it. It was just a clerical error, basically.
Well, that's the end of the questions on the document. So with the remaining time we have here, we have a couple minutes. Not super long, but we open up the questions to the chat here now. If you
Any
want to
final
ping us,
questions? Anything else to discuss? Do you want to continue the drama talk?
yeah.
Anything specific on fighters? Want to go back to the cloak discussion? Anything else? We need more drama, says Ashar. Drama makes us strong. It weeds out the weak.
And we don't mean any harm, by the way. There's no ill intent here.
Yeah, yeah. Something I've said repeatedly is we're all here to make the game better. I would hope that, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I understand that when people talk about this stuff, sure, this is not really. Was that in response to what I just said?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna ruin the game
Not
now.
to you, LOL. Okay. Okay. It's like, no, I'm not really here to make the game better.
I'm changing every weapon's damage to 1, and you can't stop me.
And anyway, yeah, but like I understand that when people are giving suggestions like this, like it's not coming from any sense of ill intent, or at least I would sure hope it's not. Zipper says, is it true that devs have been secretly planning to remove humans from the game? No, these are just baseless rumors. There's no such discussion. Doom says, no, it's just me. But yeah, so when I say like when we're talking about like no, it's not like this or it's not like that. Like we're not thinking that you guys are lying or trying to stir up crap, or at least not intentionally. Um, it's more so like, hey, we think that you just have a different perspective on this than we do, and like our perspectives don't align less so than it is like we're trying to kill each other.
Over on Twitch, Robo says, "Given the quality of the game and its content, and it is 100% free of cost, I have no complaints." Yeah. Something that was coming up recently that I keep referencing back to is we do have these debates with people, and there are disagreements on certain opinions or venues of the game, and that's natural for game development, right? It's kind of impossible to make a game that will make everybody happy. What was the phrase? It was a game for everybody is a game for nobody.
Haha.
And
Arrowhead has been popping off lately. I'll tell you that.
yeah,
Yeah, somebody said it in chat on Twitch. And we actually so we're working on some documents that is like a list of like, hey, here's frequently asked requests, and here's like our general idea of the game, um, like the direction we want things to go, broadly speaking. And that was actually a quote that I put in there. If you haven't seen it, Helldivers 2, massive explosion in popularity. The studio behind that is Arrowhead Studios, Arrowhead Game Studios. And if you like, they're I don't know what you would call like their tagline or their catchphrase or something like that is a game for everyone is a game for no one. They fully recognize that they will get feedback and suggestions and they will say no, like that is just not going to happen because that is not the game we're trying to make. So in some cases, like that's just the type of response we're going to need to give. Like no, sorry, that's not the game we're trying to make. If and a similar comment from MZ is if you want to play FTL, play FTL. If you want to play XCOM, play XCOM. If you want to play
Mhm.
4X, play 4X. We're here to play Endless Sky. That last bit added by me, but that first bit, that's actually something MZ has said. So there is a sense in which like we are going to need to just flat out reject certain suggestions and requests. But it's all a balancing act, really. We do need to figure out okay, what are we going to reject? Why are we going to reject it? And is there any way that we can implement something that will still solve the problem that somebody's having without changing the identity of the game in a sense? You mean X Force is Wolfie? Yeah, probably.
is there a preferred order players should post ideas? That kind of, I feel like that's kind of based on the person posting it. So regardless of if it's a pull request or an issue or a discussion, it will come into our vision. But like what we're looking at. But I feel like the kind of like default is if there's something you want to request for the game or something you think is an issue with the game, you usually make an issue. If you want to pull request something, usually that's following an issue, although that doesn't stop people from making pull requests without making an issue, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But some people would like to kind of take those prior steps to gauge interest, maybe kind of hear what the devs have said before, or what other contributors think about it before actually pursuing a pull request. And some people just open that pull request. It's more of like an appearance thing. So if a pull request is the start and we make our decisions against it, that may look a little odd because there was no prior discussion. It might look like we're just turning it down because the pull request is open. So it really comes down to who's opening it. Um, I would say I agree that a discussion should come first. I'm not going to say a GitHub discussion necessarily, but just a kind of venue of it. Like these chats are good examples of that. Maybe bring it up to a dev, like message them, or opening up an issue because we have discussions on issues as well too. Um, what did Warp say about issues?
Doom says we do have a feedback form after every update. We do we not?
Yes,
Yeah, we do. There's a
we
feedback
do.
form on Google that we link after every major
Hmm.
update.
Hmm.
And there was another comment I wanted to respond to.
So, but
Trying
but
to
yeah,
find it.
to to your question, it really depends, but there is kind of an order of efficiency to it if you want to think of it that way. but it's
Oh
kind
yeah.
of your own perspective.
Zora says pool room hasn't been used in years. Yeah. That's actually kind of a side effect of the fact that I said like, hey, I feel like the dev team has been a lot more cohesive lately. When we used the poll room, it was more of a, hey, we're in disagreement. What do the people think? That's why we use that for the most part. Or like maybe we weren't certain on a certain direction, so we wanted to
Hmm.
ask the people like, hey, what do you guys prefer here?
Hmm.
But now that we're a bit more cohesive, those situations don't come up.
Yeah,
So I
I
mean, we just haven't had anything to poll on, at least in our minds. So if there's any like, what would we
the
like? Is there
most
anything
recent
people think
poll
we should be polling on?
the most recent poll was engines and weapon space on one update a couple updates ago. I do want to preface though that polls are kind of similar to that of pull requests. Even if a poll is like 80% for one thing and 20% for one thing, I we can't guarantee that that's exactly what we're going to go for because at the end of the day we're still working towards our vision of the game. But it is still a good way to get a kind of a little insight to what all those who are able to answer the poll what they think about the situation. So it's not a harmful thing, but it's also not a for sure thing. So, but that's normal. That's how PRs work. That's how issues work. Yeah. Hector says part of the problem with polls is that someone who spends an hour reviewing all the facets of the question and considering everything about it are counted equally to someone who just went, "Yeah, it sounds cool."
Yeah, this is
That's why
how
we
we
don't
got
take it
18 guns on
so.
the Kestrel. If you remember that poll, the weapons
Yeah.
Kestrel people were like, well, the weapons Kestrel doesn't really give you a lot. Like maybe you should have something else. And I was like, well, maybe we can buff the number of gun ports. So we opened the poll that was like,
That's
give it 12 gun
16.
ports or 18 gun ports, and most people, of course, are going to be like, oh, more gun good.
Yeah.
I think it was actually a close poll, but but I was like,
So
all
yeah,
right, well, a plurality of people voted 18 gun ports, so let's go 18 gun
yeah.
ports. And eventually we
So
nerfed it down to 12. But
yeah.
but yeah,
So yeah. I mean, we could do polls more, but it is kind of one of those gauge things, not like actual things. If that makes sense. Or else we do get everyone is like, "Oh, the human ship with the 10 skylances. That sounds cool." Everybody votes yes. I mean, yeah, that'll happen. Yeah. Lost cause last 2 or 3 minutes, just basically talking about polls.
the lack of use of the poll room.
Yeah.
Marcus asks, the fuck were you gonna do with 18 gun ports anyway? 18 energy blasters. Super says 18 nukes. You could stack like 18 rockets or like 18 missile launchers on
Yeah.
it, and you could shred stuff.
Yeah, that was my first thing I ever did with the weapon kestrel. I posted. I think one of my first posts in the Discord was me with a weapons
18
kestrel, all
flamethrowers.
heavy rocket launchers. It's like, hey guys, check out my rocket
18
kestrel.
Gatling guns. That was one I did.
Ooh, that's fun. That's fun.
It didn't actually do that much damage, but
Not to shields, no, but the second those are down,
oh yeah, it would shred hell.
it doesn't matter what faction either. You shoot a core ship with that. Yeah. That and the for turret ships, like the most recent example for that would be all the new javelin turret and Gatling gun turret. So like for the protector, people are putting all those on them, and although they don't do a whole bunch of damage to shields, they eat hull. That's crazy.
A lost cause is 18 flamethrowers pre-balance, pre-nerf.
You click your button for half a second, and that ship's done. It can't move. Um,
Falciloid asks, what about
yeah,
localization packs from the community? I really want to share this game. Most of my friends don't know English enough.
it's on the list.
Yeah, we do want to support translations of the game at some point.
But we want
Technically
to finish
speaking, you
it.
can already make a translation of the game by going into the missions and just translating all the mission text, but leaving the like the code unchanged. the one of the big problems though with that is that a lot of the UI is hard coded right now. So a
Hmm.
lot of the text you see on the UI, you would also need to like change the engine to rename those. So like first and foremost, we need to do that so that like all the text that's displayed in the game is configurable without needing to rebuild or recompile the game. And then as Hector notes, we also lack Unicode support, which blocks you out of translating for a lot of languages because the characters just aren't there for it. Proudly says that sounds like a lot of work. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why, because this is a hobby project, there has not been a lot of swift movement on that.
A lot of that stuff's kind of like we're quote saving it for once the game's in its 1.0 state. Once we have
Uh,
everything kind of in a venue where we can tackle it all at once. I mean,
1.0 now. Yeah, Zip says, I think the WeirdNet is working on it. Yeah, he's piecewise adding stuff that will eventually actually get us to Unicode support and
yeah,
viable translations of the game.
it can happen sooner too. That's for sure.
Something else too to note. Uh, Funnily enough, total conversions and translation support are kind of tied together. Like if we make it so that you can do translations, we also effectively make it so that total conversions are possible, or more possible than they are now. You can
Hmm.
kind of do a total conversion, but the problem is you're stuck with a lot of the stock stuff in the game. Total conversion to Spanish, says Azure. So,
Hmm.
yeah. And interestingly, Rising is also doing some things to get us closer to that. The ability to reload the game while it's still open. We've made it so that you can disable plugins. Next, all we gotta do is make it so that most of the game content is basically a plugin. So we could have like a vanilla plugin, and the base game, ignoring the plugins folder, the base game would effectively just be like the interface code and like tooltips.
This guy game is.
UI plugin one, says Azure. Yeah. I mean, that's a way we could do it. I don't know if it would look janky to make it that way, but we could basically just convert the data of the game into a plugin, and then you would disable the vanilla plugin to activate your total conversion mod. Do you want to remove the rendering from the game? You can.
Make the entire game a plugin. Someone posts a bug report. Sorry, we don't support plugin content. Sorry, we no longer support In the Sky, but we're still making In the Sky.
Yeah.
What? How hard is it to add a hotkey to turn off tooltips?
We could add a setting. I don't know if we would add a hotkey for it.
Yeah.
Just a mum on Twitch says it depends on the team or single person and their unique life circumstances. Game dev is different for everyone. Responding to the last Shogun saying earlier that game dev sounds like a headache.
Yeah.
Edmar says, I don't know. In my experience, game devs generally have a lot of caffeine, screaming and crying.
I will say I've been off the caffeine for a little bit. I used to drink a ton of coffee, but not as much lately.
I've never been a caffeinated person. I don't drink coffee. I very, very rarely drink soda. For me, it's
Yeah, I don't drink.
water, orange juice, apple juice,
I
milk.
barely drink pop.
Sure says Derpy starts the day with 3 shots of whiskey. No, I'm also a teetotaler, no alcohol. And if you drink alcohol, I think lesser of you.
Wow.
Proudly says tooltips get in the way. I actually agree with you, but I don't know if disabling them entirely is the way to go. I think we should just move where the tooltip shows up so it's not going to be in the way of whatever you're hovering over.
Hmm.
Thoughts?
My only drug is In the Sky.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, brother.
But yeah, because the tooltip appears like the corner of the tooltip box is right on your cursor, but your cursor is also right on top of whatever you're trying to read. the tooltip for. So it can't get in the way of things. I think that so I added a new tooltip to the shop. You know, whenever you have a ship that doesn't have like an engines or something, or there's something wrong with it, and it gives you a little warning in the shipyard or the outfitter. And if you mouse over your ship, it'll create a box to the left of the ship you moused over and say, "Hey, here's what's wrong with your ship." I updated that so if you mouse over the ship at any time, it'll tell you the name of the ship. But I recognized, hey, I think this is the only tooltip in the game that instead of appearing directly on top of your mouse, it appears to the left of whatever you're hovering over. So you can still see the outline of your ship that you're hovering over. I think most tooltips should actually behave that way, where instead of it being directly on top of your mouse, it's like maybe in the preferences panel, it appears below whatever you're hovering over. Or same
Mhm.
thing for the shipyard or the outfitter when you're looking at stats on an outfit or a
Weird.
ship. It would appear below whatever you're hovering on instead of right on top of it. Doom's this issue.
Yeah,
There are too many issues.
yeah.
It's
Regarding
being
that,
worked on.
like that's just kind of unlucky. Like we're working on it. Like there's, it's not our intention to have so many open. That's just over years and years of
Yeah.
development.
That's
So
one of those like we don't have enough time in the day to get to everything type of things. I mean, we've started to look at old issues,
yeah.
and I actually found a bunch of old issues where I was like, "Wow, these are actually good ideas," and they're not difficult to do. So you
Mhm.
know what? Let's just do them. So that's like a lot of like I opened like 10 pull quests. A lot of those were me trying to address older issues that we saw,
It,
and we want to at some point like maybe once a month or twice a month look through all the old open issues and be like, hey, what can we do? What can we look at? Like what can we
yeah.
milestone? What can we close? Because some of them were already done too. It was like, oh hey,
It's
this was done 2 years ago and we never closed it.
it's one of those things where like you just said, we'd plan kind of put them aside, but if we spend all our time looking at those, then we'd be taking away from time from like active PRs and content creators. We do the opposite where we don't have time to look at all the issues. So
Yeah,
we kind of have to
it's a
balance it.
massive balancing act, and
Yeah.
please be patient with us.
Please.
Something I've said is balance question marks is Benny. Yeah, something I've kind of talked about before is like if you don't know, I've been working on this game since 2016 in some form or fashion. I was given dev perms in 2018, but still, like I've been here since 2016. That is 8 years. It's 8 years as of next week because I made my
Happy birthday.
yeah yeah thanks I made my GitHub account on the 6th of March in 2016, which also happened to be my birthday. So it'll be 8 years
Oh,
on
really?
the 6th next within the next week. What are you going to do for 10 years, says Hector. I have no idea. You are old, says A Lost Cause. I
Thanks.
was also 16 when I found the game, so I'm not old.
If you're calling him old, I guess I'm just ancient.
Yeah, but my point though is like I've been here for 8 years. I've seen most of the history of the game as it's developed. I'm definitely in a different. I definitely have a different perspective being one of the guys in the driver's seat. But for me, I have a very long view of the development of this game. And what I mean by that is if it takes a year, 2 years for something to be done, then I'm just kind of like, well, so be it. Like that's as long as it takes. And maybe things can be changed so it goes quicker, or maybe things can be rearranged so that we're focusing on certain things and not others, and other things take 2 years instead of whatever thing that everybody else wants to do. But
Hmm.
my point is like I completely understand why it sucks to have a pull quest open for months. Derpy with 1,000 yard stare, says Roadrunner. Yeah, sorry. I completely understand that it sucks to have a pull quest open for a
Yeah.
very extended amount of time, but like for me, I just don't like. I have to admit, I don't feel the same way about it. And again, like I am in the driver's seat. It's a completely different perspective, but but like I kind of want to give you my perspective on that. Like things take a long time in part because it's a hobby project. Our time is limited, so I do appreciate if
Mhm.
people can be patient on some of these in some of these regards, and I do also recognize that we kind of need to speed up on some of these things at times. But
Yeah.
again, since it's a hobby project, um, this can't be 100% of our time. I
Mhm.
and sometimes I wish it could be, but I have a job that I love outside of this. Like I love my hobby here, but I also love my job, so gotta
Yep.
give that its time. Um, that's also the thing that's giving me money, you know. So,
The tips wouldn't get sleep. Little do you know, Derpy's awake at like 3 a.m. sometimes on GitHub.
dude, my sleep schedule is terrible. My sleep schedule
Sometimes
is
I'm on the GitHub
terrible.
at 7 a.m.
Yeah, Hector says I don't have much time. I know how much it sucks when one of your pull requests is sitting open for months. Also, Derpy, your pull request has been open for months. I mean, yeah, I was in that seat once though. Like, I remember when I was opening pull requests and MZ wouldn't get to them. This is a bit of game history if you're newer. There was almost a time when the community revolted against MZ and like was about to fork the whole game and start their own development on a different repository because MZ was gone for like a year. He would pop up, do a few things, then disappear for weeks at a time. We were all like, "What in the world is going on?" Like, we all want to do stuff. We're all trying to develop this game here along with you, and nothing's happening. We almost forked the game. We were like weeks away from hard forking the game. And yeah, Ziproot has the it's still a repository on GitHub. The whole like the complete fork that we had. Um, but then MZ showed up and was like, "Hey, I recognize there's some issues here. Like I don't have as much time as I used to, but I recognize you guys are passionate about this. So who do you guys want me to give dev access?" And that's when we got to Houch, myself, Pointed. Then things have kind of evolved from there. But point is, I have been in that position, and I do also recognize having things get to the point of revolting. I was in your seat once, Azure. I once wanted to overthrow the devs. Azure said, "What's the status on GitHub admin and jazz and such?" Speaking of drama, I mean, I don't know how much I want to get into that now because we're kind of at the tail end of this. But I guess to tell everyone, I have emailed MZ asking like, "Hey, admin situation, like, can we talk about this?" Azure says, "Hey, I don't want to overthrow the devs. I said many times before, I think the devs do a great job in general. I just think certain things could be better." Thank you. I appreciate it, and I understand that there are things to do. Good. Derpy says, "Great." Shaking my head, humble. Did I? Ziproot says, "Admins were MZ's punishment for threatening to revolt." Yeah. He already has 2 alts in the dev team. Wordian says it's actually kind of a pity that MZ didn't fully step down. I mean, our concerns and needs changed over time. At first, I think there was an expectation that MZ would eventually return. Hence why he only gave dev access and didn't give admin access to everything. But as the years went on with just us doing the deving and MZ still not having shown back up, it became more obvious like, hey, we really need to be able to do things that only MZ can do at the moment. And that's when his account got. That's when he flipped his account to an organization and gave us admins and handed over the keys to Steam. So, and that's why Ziproot says 10.0 was the point when MZ was no longer needed at all. Yeah. Like everything is in someone else's control at this point. Like MZ still has admin access to the repository, so he could still return at any point and have all the access he had before. And of course, he still has the developer perms on Steam. He doesn't have the developer perms on GOG. But at this point, yeah, like he is like entirely stepped down in effect. Yeah, Roadrunner says, "I remember when we were in a weird limbo state when Derpy could merge pull requests, but no one could release new versions." Yeah, that was that was funny. 0.9.9 was one of the longest development cycles of the game. Not only because that's when MZ's hiatus started, but it's also even when we did get permissions, no one could deploy the game to Steam. So we just kept building and building and building, and eventually we were like, "Is MZ ever going to show back up?" And I think Zahouch emailed him and was like, "Hey, like, what's the situation?" And MZ was like, "Oh, like, if you guys want me to deploy the game to Steam at any time, just tell me when." And we were like, "Oh, okay." We were like waiting for him to show back up to finish the update.
Elemento, the game is still technically MZ's. We're not stealing his property.
Wouldn't
But
it make sense to, or wouldn't it be better to make it an actual company? No, not really, because it is still just an amorphous group of hobbyists. Like there is no
yeah,
company
we're
behind all of
keeping
this.
MZ's game alive and
Yeah,
developing on it. It's not we're making our own game.
not yet, says Hector. Hector
Anyway,
veering for the CEO position. He'll take CFO. Okay, okay.
hey, I take this game seriously, says the guy who reviews PRs after they're merged.
Elemento says, well, it makes it look like he's the sole dev. I mean, we're not really concerned about how it looks. And at least
Yeah,
if you go to, like, if you look in the game, in the credits, it lists us and then a bunch of other people aside from just MZ. Like, MZ's there as the
yeah,
creator, but and everyone else is right below him. Like, hey, we also have all these other people.
yeah. Money won't ever get involved.
Yeah, we've
The
actually.
only aspect of that is I think MCO it's something on the Discord, right, for a bot. Nothing to do with the
MCO
game itself.
hosts James and some other
Yeah.
stuff, and that has a cost to it, but it's not prohibitive
Mhm.
at all. And he's like, even if nobody was like donating for this, then he would be able to pay it.
Yeah.
So
Game's open source. It's copyright free, and we developed it under that knowledge.
Woodian says he still has his name on most of the copyright, even stuff he hasn't directly interacted with. Well, I think the stuff he hasn't interacted with still says, like, hey, it was inspired by or derived from his stuff. It's not necessarily
Yeah.
saying, oh, he made this. But
That and sometimes contributors don't want to have their name on like let's say there's like a new missions file or something that someone started for a faction and they put their name on it. I have my name on some Gegno stuff, and then some people don't want their name on that. And they'll still contribute it to MZ, and at the end of the day, it's still based on MZ's creation, and it's not really a huge kind of representational deal that we need to go out of our way to put names on things.
Elemento says, have you ever gotten an offer from a game company? And Azure asks, how is a game company going to buy an open source game? Yeah. So we haven't had any offers from game companies, but there was this one time
Yeah,
where it was like a crypto scheme. It was like it was back when like the metaverse thing was a big buzzword in the at the zeitgeist. Somebody was like, "Hey, I noticed that you have this game, and would you be interested in joining this something something or other collective?" And you can see our website here, and
yeah,
we have a blockchain technology that communicates between games or something like that. And like the whole idea behind it was you would have this currency, like you would like link your games to this blockchain, and the currency would be shared between the games. So like if you earned money in one game, you would be able to use it in another game or something to that effect. And my first thought was, is this guy an idiot? Does he not know like what our game is? Like it's open source, it's single player. And he like the games they were talking about were like, oh, like closed source multiplayer games that could add this type of stuff. And I'm thinking like, what in the world is this? And like I showed it off to the people on our inner circle. I was like, yo, what in the world is this? And we just kind of laughed
yeah.
at it. I didn't even respond to the guy. I was like, this guy's an idiot.
Probably confused for No Man's Sky, maybe.
Yeah. So that's definitely a case where an odd thing occurred.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we should have like we'll do it if you can beat the main campaign in a Sparrow. No edits.
All right. I'm going to ask, what is the difference between the ES Launcher, GitHub downloads, and the Steam page? Steam is its own deployment. GitHub downloads are just we build the game and then stick the zip folder on GitHub. The ES Launcher pulls from GitHub, to my understanding. So the GitHub launcher or the ES Launcher is taking the downloads from the same place as you would if you went to GitHub and downloaded them directly.
Mm-hmm.
Ty Bash, are there any actual questions, or are we just discussing random things now? It's random things moment. We're kind of approaching the end here. Probably wrapping up
Random
in the
things,
next
history of Endless Sky.
10, 15 minutes. I don't know. This is a bit longer than we usually go.
Yeah.
But I also started a bit
Good,
later,
though.
so it's my apologies to you. We're going a bit longer. Are the watchers still planned? Yes. Opinion on big asteroids that break into smaller ones. Erebus says like. I've thought of it.
You
They
can
wouldn't
do that.
be tiled asteroids. Azure has been looking at allowing minables as payloads. You could make asteroids with multiple stages when you mine them. We could potentially.
No content.
My main thought is how would they orbit at that point?
Yeah.
Like, 'cause you don't want them to stack on top of each other, so it would have to break up, but then still orbit, or would they just go flying straight?
I imagine they go flying.
Just add a bit of random velocity and a bit of velocity in random direction. Okay, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
I think it's totally doable. Yeah. Trying to think. Would that be difficult? The main thing you would need to do is in mineable take damage, you would need to give it the asteroid field list. I think, there's in engine. There's a do collisions function. In there is where minables take damage. You would need to pass the damage function for the minables a list of all the minables in the system, and then add to that list somehow. Warp says it wouldn't be difficult, but what's the gameplay benefit? It looks cool, dude.
There are some small cases where cool rule is okay.
Good enough of a benefit for me, says Anna. Yep.
It's like those videos of watch me knock down all these bowling pins or cut this shape in a certain way. Like it just looks cool, and that's the point. No.
Warp says you mine the asteroid, it breaks into multiple asteroids that go in separate directions, and now you have to chase one, and by the time you've done that, you've lost the others. Well, the others would still be in the system.
The idea is that it'd have more of a payload. There'd be more reward for your effort for having to chase them, I'd assume.
So just don't mine large asteroids, asteroid, right? I mean, if you don't want to. Tractor beams.
Yeah, tractor
exactly.
beams. Boom.
Yeah.
There you go.
Speaking of which, how have people been liking the tractor beams?
Yeah. How do you guys like the mining changes?
I've been enjoying them. Love them, says Anna. Haven't used them, says Ziproot. Give them a try.
And Hector.
Haven't used them, says Hector, yeah. Doom
Haven't
says,
used them.
Tractor Beam is fun. Sunder's a really nice ship. I do enjoy them. Proudly Canadian says haven't used them yet. Time says tractors are a bit funky, but nice. Yeah, there is a bit of funk to them that I want to work out.
Yeah. I still want to get deeper into Gano content someday so you can actually use their stuff. Because you can't yet. It's a work in progress.
Yeah, and this is the only issues with multiple ships with tractor beams getting one piece of flotsam stuck, but that's been fixed by just having one big freighter instead of a bunch of small ones. The way I've done it is I still have a bunch of small ships with tractor beams, but I command them to go to different areas of the map. Like, you go and mine this asteroid, you go and mine that asteroid. So they never are fighting each other. Banana says, can two ships tug of war over ore? Yes.
Yeah. Warp, the idea behind these, like, asteroids beyond what's currently in the game is that they wouldn't appear everywhere in the game. They wouldn't be in every system. They'd be in certain areas. Yeah. Yeah, getting those super asteroids. So that's what I was talking to Derpy, and he was like, yeah, we could maybe give them some unique minables because their whole lore is about, well, a good chunk of it's about mining. But yeah.
Sure, railing against tiled asteroids.
That's a separate discussion.
Doom says tiled asteroids are fine.
Doom's been on fire lately. Wow, Azure says he doesn't like Doom.
Yeah.
Impending Doom.
Hector says, can we start an ES gambling ring based on ships fighting over a mineable with tractor beams?
Whoever thought of minigame, stop.
Edmar asks, Steam achievements, are they being considered at some point?
Oh
No.
wait, we're not. After I said that, Wordian says minigames. Like, no, not really.
The main problem with that is that in order to have Steam achievements, your game needs to be able to hook into the Steam API. And
We can't do that.
yeah, to our understanding, that conflicts with our license that we release the game under.
Yeah. I still think it'd be cool to have like that gambling thing in spaceports or whatever. But
Everyone loves lock picking mini games.
stock markets, oh boy.
No. Reskinned Skyrim / Fallout lockpicking.
Yeah, I'm gonna add loot box to spaceports to get those NFTs we're talking about.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we should wrap this up in the
Yeah.
next, let's say, like 10, 10
Yeah.
minutes. Is there any final questions?
All right. Rapid fire round.
Yeah, rapid fire. Get your last questions in.
One sentence questions now.
Boarding rework thoughts. Define boarding rework. High reveal progress. Not much. I know Gray has a system. We've said no to Gray's system.
What's 9.6
basically? 9.6.16, is that the mass changes?
If it is, yes, soon, please.
I want that to be the first major balance pull request I look at, because that's going to affect everything else in the biggest ways. Do you believe in true love? Yes.
Yes.
Will the Limb trilogy be merged? What's the Limb trilogy?
It's a plug-in thing. No.
Could fighters or drones drop off their cargo to the mothership when they dock? I think they already do. There might be a setting for it. Are you open to more complex boarding ideas? Define complex. I don't want boarding to be too complex. I think like consumable hand-to-hand weapons is like one of the most complex things I'm looking for.
Would it be okay to PR a new faction, no sprites, assuming most other stuff is done? I guarantee you, if you ask for sprites in this Discord, our artists will really want to make them.
Define no sprites. We should have ship sprites. If you're saying no ship sprites, that's wild.
Yeah.
No outfit sprites, we actually have done that before. MZ's done it.
You're talking about the what's they're called? I said I'd be happy to make some for you.
Doom asks, complex numbers of crew. Imaginary crew? Question mark. Square root of I crew? No, probably not. Piercing projectiles. Projectiles that spawn projectiles without dying. Anything that can reduce my weapons file from thousands of lines. Piercing projectiles we already have. If you're talking about like things going through ships, that was released in the last major update. Projectiles that spawn projectiles without dying, I have a pull request open for that. I'm working on it. That should massively help whatever crazy submunition stuff you're trying to do.
Thoughts on different crew types along with species lines? Probably not. Kind of similar to how we don't have portraits.
AI crew, no. Alien starts later. Hear me out. Radiation gun, no. Ship ramming, I wish I could do that. No. The best we're going to give you is a melee weapon. Like, you have to be very close to your target to actually deal damage to it.
How do you feel about snowball trading? It's whatever, but we're not basing the game around it.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you want to do it, you can do it. There's really no effective way we can nerf it without like completely ruining other parts of the game. So it's just kind of like an allowable exploit.
Photon guns. Some maybe alien. Who knows?
I don't know. Ship ramming, shooting star. What? Oh yeah. As an example.
Ship ramming, like overall, no. Weapons to do it, yes, already exists, kind of.
Okay. Last 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Realism, no. 2, 1. Oh, there was questions on Twitch. Okay. Ding, ding, ding. No more questions. No more questions. I wasn't looking at Twitch chat, so I'll give you these.
Sorry.
What's your favorite dinosaur?
Um,
Stegosaurus. You?
I can't give a good answer to that. I
Okay.
don't remember the name of it.
He doesn't. It's one of those ones with a really uh, vulgar name. Edmar. Is there any way to manage which ships carry what cargo? No. If not, is there a plan in place to do that? At best, we're going to say you can move your car. You can say, do I want my cargo to go to my flagship first or my escorts first? But saying, okay, this cargo goes to this ship, this cargo goes to that ship, probably not. All right, we'll end it there. No more questions. Actress is my last message. Change the world. Yes, yes. All right, well, thank you everyone for coming to today's campfire chat. As always, we do this the first Saturday of every month. We have a submission box where you can place questions beforehand, although, as you can see, we do also answer questions live. Thank you, Sog and Warp, for joining me today, and as well as everyone else who contributed to the discussions. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about? Any final thoughts? Any final words, Sog or Warp?
Um, fuck real says Worf.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's his
Um,
final thoughts.
my final thought: I'm looking forward to breaking the game with balance changes for next update.
Let's go. Let's go. Final thoughts for myself. Uh, please be patient.
Yes,
I
please.
am a game dev. Where's the submission sheet? We'll link it
Ditto.
after this is over.
Yeah.
All right, but yeah, that's it. Hope everyone has a good rest of your day,
Yep.
and
Thanks
hope
for
to see
coming.
you next time on April 6th. April 6th, same time.
Hope to see you at the next fighter balance discussion.
Yep. Adios.
See you.